Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Karima and Peter, for having me here, and congrats on the new center. I'd like to follow up in some sense of what Albert Meyer earlier presented, the governance perspective. He made a plea for citizen engagement in, well, the making of the city. I think I'll make a plea in that short 10 minutes for a more strategic approach to using data, right? So not data-driven or pushed by data or the availability of data, but by a strategic approach towards it. And I will present also a slightly less nice picture of Brabant, also from those from abroad. From what you hopefully can see here, but it's a bit vague. This should be a map of Europe, where in the midst you see Brabant, where the majority of the MDMA production takes place. MDMA is basically ecstasy, right? So there's large-scale production around us here, presently even, of drugs. This is data, by the way. This is Europol data on the basis of actual labs being discovered, stashes being found. So what we see here is, and I'm zooming in a bit here on Brabant. This is actually the locations for where drug waste has been dumped, and you see that the province of North Brabant is is peaking here, right? I could zoom in even further, for instance, on the city of Tilburg, where apparently on a yearly basis about a billion euros is made in weed, the business of weed, marijuana. But I won't. This, by the way, is data from the Dutch police. Just to show that there is, the people in the southern part of the Netherlands are very entrepreneurial, also in an illegitimate way. But this raises a more broader problem of the southern Netherlands and some of these issues in relation to crime, which I use as an example here. Some of politicians have referred to Brabant as the Sicily of the North, and then not necessarily in a positive way, right? Meaning that the illegitimate sectors are increasingly interwoven with legitimate sectors. Business, but also government. Politicians are intimidated, criminals infiltrate the legitimate sectors of governance. So I'm using this here as an example because this is a particularly what public administration scholars would call a wicked problem, which raises all kinds of governance questions, challenges for governance. So I presented some data here of what we know of official statistics. Albert already mentioned, this is the data we have, but it's probably not revealing the entire problem. So the question becomes how to diagnose and define for these type of problems. How do you actually do that if you not know what the precise nature and extent is of these problems? How do you generate legitimacy and support, and how do you build capacity for an approach to tackle these type of problems? If it's quite difficult to already make a claim about how effective such an approach is going to be, right? For a lot of problems, routine-like problems, we know we have off-the-shelf solutions. We don't have them here. And how do you build legitimacy and support for that? And how do you build resources around it? So how do you ensure coordination, a collaboration of a very diverse set of actors that you need, stakeholders, which have different perceptions, different interests, different values, and define the problem in a different way, have potentially also different solutions available. How do you manage performance if it's quite difficult to actually measure how you're doing, right? If you don't know how big exactly the problem is, How do you measure if you're successful in kind of reducing it? And this relates to Albert's presentation, how do you empower and engage public professionals, citizens who, well, not always have the skills or the attitude to actually be actively involved in tackling such wicked problems as crime. So then data. So there's a promise there. There's a promise of data, big data there, that it could first of all improve the problem diagnosis and the definition, right? So more, better data could help us to get a better idea of how this problem of crime here in Brabant or in particular cities is. The data could also strengthen the coordinative and the collaborative capacity. It could help, sharing data could help, build coalitions of public but also private parties trying to tackle this problem. It could also help enhance the agency, the autonomy of public professionals, right? They're empowered through the availability of data. It enables them actually to get a better grip of these problems. It also helps to engage citizens. I think Albert referred to the WhatsApp groups to reduce security or to help maintain safety in local neighborhoods. There's a big promise there of data, and generally that would or could help us moving from, well, traditional rule-based, task-focused, hierarchical government, so only public parties, to much more problem-oriented, performance-driven, collaborative governance, where a variety of parties, stakeholders play a role. So we have been experimenting with this and testing out, whether this promise can be fulfilled in what we call organized crime field labs. So where we collaborate with a variety of public and private parties, and where we train and coach multidisciplinary teams of public prosecutors, police, tax officials, local government officials, but also private parties such as energy network operators. So what we work on is the problem-solving process, using data, collecting data, using it in innovative ways. We bring them together in a collaborative space, and we also think about, effectiveness, measuring effectiveness, and rendering account of what they're actually doing. And we also, on the basis of the data they collect, we are able to continuously monitor their progress, evaluate how are they doing, and they are able themselves to do so as well. So what we do is they learn, we learn, and at the same time we also do research on this while they're working on these real-life problems, such as weed plantations in local neighborhoods. For instance, this is apparently a lot of citizens have this on the at some point someplace in their house. They make some additional money by having a small scale or sometimes larger scale weed plantation. This used to be approached or defined as a problem, as a crime problem, in the sense that this is illegal at some point, right? But we managed to define it also in a different way in the project, as a fire hazard. So we reframed it on the basis of data we had about the fires this caused. Yeah. So we brought in data from different government parties. We brought in data from the network operator that could actually measure the network, right? So could actually identify where electricity was stolen, etc. So we brought together different parties, and we came to different diagnoses of the problem, increased collaboration around the problem, and new and innovative approaches to tackle the problem, actually, beyond just repressive law enforcement. There are many problems we've been working on this, which I won't go into in depth. I want to finish up with what this means in my view is that what we need here is a much more strategic approach to the collection and use of data, right? So it starts with the problem, the diagnosis thereof, and identifying what you want to do and what you can do perhaps more or better with data. So identifying the societal gains. So you want to build capacity around it. You want to make sure legitimacy is generated, right? Acceptance from the various stakeholders involved, but also from also in the case of the wheat plantations, for instance, citizens, right? So my plea is for a data-smart, strategic approach. So not merely centered around the data, but around a problem and a better definition thereof, and engagement and empowerment of public professionals and citizens.
Thank you.
This is.